Welcome, everybody. I'm Diane Gayer, and I'm talking with Mannie Lionni today about 05401. And we've worked together on this for a while.
Yeah.
But you've been producing them for 30 years. Mm-hmm. Do you remember your first issue?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah,
What was in it?
Well, what was in it was a long series of recommendations for how Burlington should develop over the next 25 years. They've turned out to be mostly wrong, with hindsight.
So that's why you've needed to continue the issues,
yes.
To push that dialogue forward.
That agenda, that dialogue. Yeah, well, so that was the big piece in there.
Yeah, maybe not everyone knows 05401, and there are some issues that we've photographed so that you can see what the covers look like. But we'll talk further, but how would you describe 05401?
That's really hard. I started publishing it in 1995. My architectural practice had collapsed. I had 4 or 5 terrific projects that all failed. They didn't get funded, whatever the reasons. They all failed, and so my professional career had sort of failed at that point. And I'd been working 40 years as an architect, and I thought, well, okay, somebody's trying to tell me something. Maybe I should do something else. Yeah. And I don't know how people take this, but at the same time, I got a call from my father saying that he and my mother had been talking, and they had decided that I would never be able to earn a living, and that they were going to help me.
At the age of 65.
At the age of 65, and that was a fairly true assessment. I had never earned a whole lot of money as an architect, and so the money gave me the opportunity to not work really in that sense of working for money, and I thought of what I could do, and the idea of doing a magazine was interesting to me because architecture is restrictive and there's so many responsibilities and legal responsibilities and just material responsibilities, and doing a magazine seemed to be free, and I could talk about stuff and I could talk about things that I couldn't deal with in architecture, like music or food or other things. And
yeah, in the beginning it was focused on design, urban design, architecture.
Well,
but also with food and sex and rock and roll?
Yeah. Not rock and roll,
no.
But food and sex. Food and sex, well, I meant to do a magazine about architecture and planning, essentially, but that's a really boring subject in itself, So I thought, well, okay, what? And I was also interested in food and sex, and so I thought I would add those and make the art magazine more interesting. Sex has not been a very successful part of the magazine because it's really hard to get people to write seriously about erotic stuff. That's just, I found it hard to get people to write stuff.
Right, okay, so that part of getting people to write, so in the process of developing these, you also got a cohort of writers and photographers and poets that you cultivated into helping you produce it.
Yeah. Yeah, in my mind, the magazine evolved from being just a personal expression to really giving voice to giving space to some of the voices in our community and in the broader community, to talk about whatever seemed to be current at the time.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing is it was broader. It also, by being local, was also global, and sometimes there were other languages crafted in there. Sometimes it was graphics that were hard to interpret.
Well, the languages, I mean, there's a history in New England of multi-language newspapers. There were French language newspapers in New England, for instance, and then a lot of the people who live here speak French, and many speak Italian or other languages, and I'm not familiar with any of the Asian languages, but certainly the European languages, and I thought it would be an opportunity like for instance, Italian. I have a lot of friends in the Italian American community here. Italian American communities tend to be somewhat conservative, But they never get to see anything written in their own, let's say, original language, not their first language, because most people are born here, but certainly the language of their ancestors. And so I thought that if I wrote in their language, they might be open to more progressive views. That's all.
But it also leads to languages rooted in place. So you haven't really left that notion of designing in place just because it's language.
No.
The two inform each other.
Yeah.
And at some level then draw people out of the community.
Yeah.
I can graphically see some issues where there's a poem with a lot of erasures and crosses out and X's and.
You can?
Yeah, I flipped it open the other day. Was it in Paolo's issue? It was a set of pages.
Yeah, it might have been.
Yeah.
My brother. I did a monograph about my brother. Yeah.
Yeah. So graphically it becomes interesting. It's not just the written text and an image. There's a lot of interplay.
Yeah. My son laid out the magazine originally. My father was a graphic artist. My brother was a graphic artist. My son was a graphic artist. So
So where did you go wrong?
I know. So I mean, that also sort of informs what I do, why I do, and what I do in the magazine.
Yeah. Well, my father was an engineer and I end up an architect. So, I mean, there is that family familiarity with.
Why didn't you end up as an engineer?
My brother was.
Oh, really?
So I couldn't do what my brother did.
Why not?
Not room.
Not room.
Not room.
Yeah. I feel that my father was an artist, and he sort of sucked up all the oxygen, and so I never thought of myself as an artist.
It was easier to compete as an architect. It gave me a different voice.
Yeah.
But just like you, at the age of 50 or 65, I realized I was never going to be famous. So, rethink what you're doing and how you're doing it. Yeah.
Had you wanted to be famous up to that point?
No, but I was taught that that's what architects are supposed to be. That they're supposed to make money and be famous.
Yeah.
And when that's not you,
Yeah.
it becomes interesting to see how do you fit into that.
Yeah, I have a grandson who wants to be an NBA basketball player, and he's 5'2", and he's not very fast, And I've told him that the odds are sort of against him.
Yeah. Well, we do have bioengineering now.
We do.
It could change his body.
Yeah.
Another design issue
Yeah.
on AI.
Yeah.
Oh, but Jan Schultz wrote something on AI recently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jan is an old friend, and the magazine is somewhat nepotistic. I don't know if that's a word or not, but there's a lot of nepotism. I mean, I've shown my son's work, I've shown my wife's work, I've shown my daughter has written for the magazine, I've shown my nephew's work, I've shown just.
Well, you're also relying on friends too.
And I have a group of friends who I can sort of lean on if the magazine is sort of thin and I need to give it some substance. Any particular issue, I need to give it some substance,
I think of Nancy Hellebrand's photographs, for example.
You better describe what they are, because I'm not going to.
So, I'm not sure which issue it was, but within the last couple of years. Nancy has photographs of naked women's bodies.
Yeah.
But sort of from the neck down.
Not all of them.
A couple heads, yeah. And they're all old bodies, all showing everything that there is to enjoy.
Yeah.
And they're provocative. They're not what we see every day, and we certainly don't see it in the magazines.
Yeah.
So where you can have a design magazine that brings in other ways of looking at the world.
I would like to say something about about Nancy's photographs. Like Diane said, the photographs are provocative because you're not used to seeing old people like me with our bellies and our wrinkles and all of our problems exposed. And I'd say two things about it. One is I have my oldest friend in the United States draws beautifully. And he, for a long time, drew life portraits of naked people, you know, and they were always these blonde women with perfect breasts and sort of Bambi kind of Bambi kind of looks to them, you know. And we had endless conversation. I said, why don't you draw like ugly people? And he couldn't get the concept. Michelangelo did a lot of ugly people, you know, and Leonardo drew ugly people, and Rembrandt drew ugly, not ugly is
well, Rodin's sculpture of Balzac. I mean, it's
but aged people and people who showed in their bodies the lives that they had lived, you know.
Well, that's maybe a problem with art school or something. I don't know. I didn't go there.
Yeah, perhaps.
I shouldn't say things like that.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
But I mean, Nancy. One of the things one of the problems I have with the magazine, I'll give you an instance. I show photographs, hers, but many photographs. I show suites of photographs in the magazine, of maybe 6 photographs by a photographer, and it's the best printed magazine in Vermont, and maybe for a small town in the United States. The quality, I'm saying the quality of the printing is very, very high. The photographs, in my opinion, look beautiful. There is no magazine that shows photographs that way here locally. And except for 2 friends, Barry Snyder, and Nancy, nobody has ever sent me a portfolio of their photographs and asked me if I would be interested in publishing them. Nobody.
So,
Nobody.
but
there are thousands of photographers in Vermont.
Yeah.
So
that gets to that audience question, that it's not, the audience hasn't been photographers.
You know, we put it out all over the city, you know, and it's available to be picked up.
Yeah.
And I'm sure photographers have picked it up. And what I would say, since I have the opportunity of this platform, is that if you are a photographer, send me a link to your work or send me images. And I used Nancy as an example because I went to dinner with Barbara one evening in Florida, in Sarasota, and both Nancy and her husband and I had houses there. And they went out to dinner, and there was a neighbor of ours eating at a table nearby who is quite debilitated. She walks with 2 sticks. She's one of those people that sort of walk hunched over completely. She's the frailest looking thing. Her legs are like this. And she came over they finished before we did. She came over, and I said, let me introduce. And I introduced Nancy to this woman, and this woman to Nancy. And Nancy said, would you pose for me nude?
Immediately, right there on the spot. Yeah.
You know, so I think photographers need to have that kind of, they need to be convinced that what they're doing is important and valuable.
Yeah.
And I urge all of them to, I mean, it's not just photographers, it's graphic designers or painters or sculptors, anybody that I can publish. But people tend to be pretty shy about submitting stuff.
Well, and I think of Michael Wisniewski or myself submitting things, but we're sort of randomly submitting anything to you.
But you're friends of mine.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, so we are involved in a dialogue that goes on all the time.
That's
so
right.
It's more natural for you to do that.
Yeah.
I think.
But Justin, who was just in this last issue, Jordan. Sorry.
Jordan. Yeah.
Jordan.
I met Jordan at a party.
Good. Yeah. I like Jordan. But you did talk about the
Jordan Douglas is who you're talking about,
the printing and Volantes. We should name Volantes because I think they're worth.
Volante's terrific.
Volante, yeah. And
when I first started publishing the magazine, I published it. I got a printer here in Burlington. Then I got a second print. The first issue was in black and white, and it was a very modest, 24 pages or something. And then I got another printer, but the printing quality wasn't great. And then I found Volante. Volante is a printing company in Milton, and they just do fabulous work. And they have a place where, if you've never seen a real printing press, they have a couple of German printing presses that are about 80 feet long.
The Heidelberg.
Yeah, and they are just phenomenal. They have 4 or 5 towers that have rollers. that have different colored inks on them. And the paper goes through these things like a bat out of hell. It just scoots through there. And the rollers are imprinting the images. And at the end, there's some guy from Vermont with a baseball cap, right, who has a hunting rifle in the back of his truck. And he has a loop, and he's checking the registration to make sure that everything is registered, that all the images are in the correct position on top of each other. It's thrilling for me to see people working who really know what they're doing and are good at what they're doing.
I think my book was one of the first ones when they got that press, right?
Really?
Yeah, it was
Really?
like the trial run.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was the book?
That of Earth and Being.
Oh, yeah.
Photographs and text. I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking about
Yeah.
photographs and text. But yeah. And at one point when we were talking, you mentioned how magazines had influenced you, like the New Yorker, because it had a hybrid of everything.
That's my competition. So.
Oh, okay.
Not
just the architectural mags.
We all have an imaginary competitor that we're fighting with.
Yeah.
For me, the New Yorker is, I don't want it to be, but I always measure myself against it, and I always fail. One of the things that
you don't have the same audience.
Well, yeah, I do.
Okay, maybe, yeah,
I do.
that's a good point.
The difference is, one of the differences that the New Yorker, no, let me start again. One of the differences that I print stuff, for instance, that is badly written. And my wife gives me a really hard time about it all the time. She's on the side of the New Yorker, right? She says, well, you should never print stuff that is badly written. My problem is that I get things submitted to me by people who are my neighbors or who live in Burlington. I get things that are badly written but have a point of view. They express some reality that I think is important for other people to share, to understand, to know. And I'm nominally the editor of 05401, but I have an editor who I work with, Janice Grill, who's just terrific and careful and creative and smart and beautiful and loves me, so I will say anything about her that I need to say. No, but I have this editor, and we have endless discussions about editing pieces, which I do to some extent, and we do to some extent. We edit the material that we get because we're a magazine, but there's only a certain point where if you edit it to make it better English, you lose the voice, the sound of that particular person, their voice, Yeah. So I try to preserve the voice, and sometimes that means stuff that is awkwardly written, badly maybe is the wrong word, but awkward, and it could be written better, it could be said better, And that's a big difference between me and the New Yorker. They have terrific writers who understand the English language very well.
And work at it professionally.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of the staff.
Yeah. No, but what I like about the New Yorker is that it's lively, and it has cartoons, and it has serious stuff, and it has a broad range of articles, from profiles to other kinds of articles, and in-depth reporting that I can't do, and that I do less and less as I get older. And it's just a terrific standard to compare yourself with, I feel, for anybody who's doing magazines.
So how did you get the title Free Radical?
I'm not sure.
Is it 05401 Free Radical?
I really
or Free
don't know.
Radical 05401?
Yeah, no, the magazine is 05401 and was for 20 years. And somewhere along the line, I sort of this word, these two words came up to me somehow, and I thought, oh, okay, well, that's the way I think about myself. I think of myself as free. I was born in Italy. I live here. I feel I'm cosmopolitan. Of the world, and I don't feel very many restraints on my life. I'm privileged. And I like to think of myself as a radical. Now, in fact, when push comes to shove, I turn out to be as conservative as everybody else. But I like to think of myself that way. And I think of the world. I mean, I think that we are facing a world that requires radical action. Free radical is actually a destructive element, right, in the body. And it has that potential. I don't mean it that way. So
well, I think because it's not attached,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
So it has a capacity to move and do things that maybe are unaccepted.
Yeah.
So I think that is a role of this magazine, is that it does bring a voice that can ask questions that aren't always asked, and illustrate directions for Burlington. I mean, going all the way back to the first one, but proposing directions, whether it's now City Place or back to the orphanage or the waterfront where we started 30 years ago. All of those design questions
Well, but the magazine, you know.
can come at as a free radical.
Yeah. The magazine, though, also, you know, it's a way for me to understand myself. You know, because I'm always surprised by what comes out of the magazine. And I would say I'm not a writer particularly, and I don't write that well, but every once in a while I read something and say, gee, that's really good. Where did that come from?
I totally get that. I totally get that, yes.
Yeah, in your work?
Yeah.
Yeah, in your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's streamed from outer space.
Yeah.
It's not something that I am consciously doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have friends, Mark Estrin, for instance, who died recently, who was a very close friend of mine, and who wrote many books. I mean, he and all writers, I think, always say that when they start writing a book, they don't really have any idea of what their characters are going to do. They just sort of invent the characters, put them out in front of a camera, and say, "Okay, talk," you know, and then they just have to write it down. I mean, it's an exaggeration, but I think there's truth in that.
Yeah, that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not about inventing characters and listening to them. I don't know. That's too much work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I write for my grandchildren.
Good.
You know.
Good.
And I also write for the person that's hiding inside of all of us. I mean, my own prejudice about Burlington is that we are all artists and poets, but that most of us are in the closet with respect to those issues, that we were brought up by conservative, recent immigrant families, many of us, who wanted to achieve the American dream and didn't see art, for instance, as a way of achieving the American dream. They saw becoming a doctor, becoming a lawyer, becoming a carpenter, becoming a stonemason or plumber or electrician or a doctor, any of those things, you know, but not an artist.
So do you think that explains why there's less respect for design, for architecture in this country?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if I think of Italy or France, I mean, they're known for style and for thoughtful design and putting things together.
Yeah.
But putting things together is still constructive.
Well, yeah, it is. But there's an element to artistic creation that makes people nervous. And I'm trying to, in the magazine, I'm trying to give voice. I'm trying to legitimize that activity in a way. You know, say it's okay to write poetry. It's okay to have weird thoughts about construction. It's okay to wonder about things.
To search for beauty.
To search for beauty, yeah.
Because
I publish your photographs. They're beautiful photographs.
Well,
You search for beauty all the time.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. Well, I think it's all around us. We just don't always.
You want me to talk about your shirt and your haircut?
That was, yeah. Well, your current issue, it's not future issue, it's sort of the upcoming direction that you're taking is about the future of Burlington, not as a set of financial stats or population, but about
Also.
the culture.
Yeah,
Okay.
the culture.
So also
Yeah.
about the culture of the place that we love and care about.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of that search for our common collective beauty of place.
Well, when we were driving with Mary in the car to come here this evening, you know, and you were saying, I was asking whether you fit in, or whether I fit in, or whether Mary fits in, you know, whether we fit in. And we all, Mary fits in, but the two of us were saying that we don't really fit in. I'm an immigrant, so I've always had this not fitting in thing about me, you know. I am always aware that I don't quite fit in.
Well, she fits in, but her world has shifted.
Yeah.
So she doesn't fit the current world.
Yeah. Yeah.
I might be adapting to the current world better, but I didn't start in this same world. So yeah, so where do I fit in? I've been dislocated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, see, the magazine, like the next issue of the magazine, what I'm thinking about, what I'm trying to think about is that the arts in Burlington are an extremely productive part of the community. Mm-hmm. I mean, productive in terms of culture, productive in terms of mental health, productive in terms of money, and productive in terms of beauty. Let's say, but it's not really recognized still. So I'm trying to give a voice to that, and I'm also faced with a reality of homelessness and mental illness and drug addiction and violence, all of which sort of go with the nature of cities in this moment in the world. I mean, every city has this problem at every scale. But in Burlington, it has sort of, those let's say 4 things, have sort of taken over the public dialogue to the extent that there's no room to talk about anything else. And I think that we need to, I think in the next issue I'm going to, at the risk of sounding Pollyanna-ish, I'm going to suggest that Burlington has many attributes and some flaws, you know. And we need to find a different balance between how we talk about the attributes and the flaws, because I think right now, for instance, people are angry about the streets not being accessible, about the traffic, about the parking meters, about the high school, which is never going to get finished, all this stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, and yet the high school is going to get finished. The streets are almost finished. Everything, and in the meantime, there's a lot of caring going on.
Yeah.
And for people who haven't read the magazine, I would like to reemphasize that in the last issue, I did a small opinion piece about the generosity of strangers, the generosity that I feel as a 93-year-old person trying to walk. I walk with a rollator just to get to my office from my car. I have to maneuver some steps. I have to open the door to my office building. And there's almost not a time goes by that somebody doesn't come and offers to help me. And those people are adults. They are children, surprisingly, because I thought children didn't know about this anymore. I've had homeless people walk across the street and ask me if they could help me get up the stairs. I mean, with all the stuff that we deal with, there's an underlying, I believe, I hope, that there's an underlying generosity of spirit, a humanity in all of us.
Maybe this is something that I could get access to. 8 years ago, the AIA invited 6, 8 young architects. Maybe they weren't all young, but I was thinking they were young architects, and they interviewed homeless people. Oh. And then they created a set of drawings, like storyline and drawing panels, and those were exhibited at the Fletcher Free Library. I think the panels all went back to the architects that made them, but there's got to be a record of what those panels were. They were all this big, and they were on display. They were very beautiful, and they told the humanity of that combination of the dream of the person who's living on the street and the person who designs buildings. And it was a really nice coming together of, so those could be interesting as a insert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, those issues, that's what's on my mind for the next issue.
Yeah. So what's the Free Range Project?
No?
I don't know anything about it.
It doesn't have anything to do with the magazine. My friend Mark died 2-3 months ago. And
this is what you were going to work on
together.
Yeah,
we were close friends, but we didn't agree about anything. Mm-hmm. So we met every Wednesday evening to watch movies at Mark's house, and most of the time we never got to see the movie because we got involved in a discussion, and it was, by the time we looked up, it was 11 o'clock at night. It was too late to watch the movie. So we had many discussions, and we basically disagreed about everything. But there was some glue that held us together. I'm not sure what it was exactly. You know, he came from the Bronx. I came from Italy, Philadelphia, New York. I don't know really what it was. And one of the sort of ongoing issues that we had was that I am a person of privilege. I have lived in several countries. I have traveled to many countries. I love to eat. I really love to eat. Mark equated food and corruption. And we don't need to go into it, but that's sort of my simple.
Oh, so free range is food.
Stupid assessment, you know, right? So at some point, and at some point I decided I would write a letter to Mark about all the food that I've eaten and that I've enjoyed, because he didn't seem to be interested in any food, any kind of food, right? And it got to be 10,000 words. But unfortunately, Mark died before I could finish the letter and give it to him. So what it is basically is every food that I have, that I can still summon up on the tip of my tongue, the memory of that taste. From milk, water, steaks, kidneys, and eggs, whatever it is, either the first time or the best time that I ever had that, the closest that it ever got to perfection. I still remember all that stuff on my tongue, and I just wrote it down, and I don't know what, at this point, I don't know exactly what to do with it because I can't send it to Mark anymore. Right. So maybe I'll do a little book. Yeah, and that would be separate. It wouldn't necessarily fit. No. Yeah,
but it does sort of bring food back into the.
Food and sex.
Yeah, and we talked about smell, and I don't know if you ever read the book The Smell of the Sensuous. I think, yeah.
No.
Oh, it has such a beautiful opening of somebody in, let's call it Thailand, in a rice paddy. He's probably in the Peace Corps, and he comes out of his little hut at night, and he can't tell up from down because the sky and the stars are equally in the rice paddy as they are above him, and he just melts into the into the earth, into the sky, into whatever it is. He melts away. But I think of when there was a moment that you were talking about the smell of food being in an issue.
Yeah.
Bringing aromas into the production of design.
I have a hard time with food in Burlington.
Oh,
I really do. It's there's this wonderful diversity of food, but I'm not sure you can take food away from where it was born and bring it somewhere else.
I have such a good example of that. So I went to India. The last thing I did before getting on the plane is I went to the midnight markets of sweets, shops of sweets.
In India?
In India, in New Delhi, region of New Delhi. Like a street as jam-packed as any market street you can ever imagine, and long and big and colorful and bright and noisy. And I bought, boxes of candy, of sweets, sugar things. I brought them back. It was January. I go to the office at UVM. I was working at UVM at the time. And I open up the package, and it's dead. There's not a flavor that's understandable. There's not an aroma that's understandable. Even to me who experienced, I couldn't put it back together. They weren't contained because the visual auditory presence was gone.
Yeah. Well, see, if you go to New York and you have enough money, then you can go to restaurants that are prosperous enough, rich enough, are making enough money that they can recreate some of the environmental factors that contribute to making food taste so great in Italy, which doesn't taste so great here.
No.
But it's always an approximation.
So what happened when you went to the restaurant that was in the dark? Could you still smell when you couldn't see?
Sure. Diane is referring to a restaurant in Paris. There have been others, but a restaurant in Paris that is completely black. No light, and the waiters are blind. And when you enter into a room that is lit, that has a bar. You take anything that's electronic, your phone, anything that has lights in it. You put them in a little locker with a key. You take the key, and then a waiter comes out of the dining room through a double pair of felt drapes. And you put your arm on his shoulder, or her shoulder, his shoulder in that case, and then your son and your children and your wife put their arms on the shoulder of the person in front of them. And the waiter leads you through the first set of felt black drapes into a room that's completely dark, through another set of felt black drapes, into the dining room where you can't see shit. You can't see anything, you know? And they walk you to a table, and they put your hand on the back of the chair where the chair is, and you sit down, and then they bring food, and you have a choice of two menus, either the menu that you see in the anteroom that lists the food, or a surprise menu. We, of course, being who we are, we took the surprise menu. We can handle that, right? Well, you would be surprised. I was surprised, at least, how difficult it is to get a fork into a piece of meat that you can't see.
And then you don't know if it's meat yet.
You don't know if it's meat or not. You can't. The tip of the fork really has no nerves in it. It doesn't feel the difference between the meat and the spaghetti, or the coils of cucumber that has been shredded to be like. And in order to pour yourself a glass of water, you can find the pitcher, you can find the glass, you can hold the glass, and you can put your finger inside the glass so that when you pour the water, when it gets up to a certain level, it hits your finger, you stop pouring. It doesn't work that way. You pour it, and it goes all over the table. and it was especially hard for my granddaughter, Alix, because she was, I think, 6, and she is this Parisian, blonde, beautiful, young little girl whose entire persona has to do with how she looks. And she suddenly found herself in a room where nobody could see her. And she had a really hard time with that.
Yeah. So it's really the senses are gone in that case.
Well, not all the senses. There's a little hanky-panky that goes on. You can sense it in the adjoining tables. Yeah.
But for me, I mean, talking about that strange restaurant, it's still relevant to life and how we live it, lead it.
Well, I was surprised because I think I'm a sensitive person. I'm an architect, and I've been thinking about these things all my life, and yet I was shocked by how difficult it really is for a blind person to do, at least for me. Now, a blind person, of course, develops strategies, I guess. But it was
practice and it's crazy.
Yeah, and I have trouble in restaurants because most restaurants think that they should be dark. There are restaurants here. Let's say Mayday, for instance, which is sort of a hip restaurant on North Winooski, not inexpensive, but has a lot of young people, a lot of noise. I can't see the food. And so what I did was I bought myself a little LED lamp.
Oh, that you can take with you
and
illuminate.
With me to the restaurant, I put it in the middle of the table. I don't
Lessons for many of us.
I don't know. There's something about food and romance, right? Food and sex, food and romance in the United States. I like a beautiful, large, well-lighted room.
Like Bove's used to be.
Well, like Bove's used to be, yeah. Bove's used to be that way.
Yeah.
It was a little scratchy, but it was like that.
The booths were scratchy?
No,
or the food was scratchy?
No, the room.
Oh,
the room.
Yeah. Wow.
You're good at this, Diane.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Reaction to the issues. Once in a while, and I'm not going to go to your dream right now, but once in a while, you might get a note from somebody, but you don't, I mean, the audience is sort of generic Burlington as an audience, for all you know.
Yeah. Here's how it works. About 15 or 16 years ago. I used to teach at the Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, School of Architecture. And my faculty chairperson was a woman named Mimi Lobel, who was an architect. Mimi Lobel was an architect. Her husband was an architectural historian. They both taught at Pratt, and she was my faculty chairperson. And while I was teaching there in the late 1960s, they published a book called John and Mimi, An Open Marriage. I think that was the title, but it was basically how they had sex with all the different people.
In the faculty or aside?
No, just in life, and how that informed their architectural practice. And so at some point, while I was publishing the magazine, I thought of Mimi, and I thought, because she had written, it was a series of chapters in which she wrote one, they alternated chapters. And she had written a chapter about how she had gotten involved with a person in the architectural office who was 2 desks back, and they were having an affair. And she was married to John at the time, and they were having an affair. And at the same time, she was reading Robert Venturi's book on contradiction and complexity in architecture. And I thought that what she wrote about his ideas of freedom and restraint and how that related to her sexual life was interesting. And I thought, okay, I could publish that. So I called Mimi up, and we hadn't seen each other for maybe 20 years. And I said, Mimi, how are you doing? And she said, I'm fine. And we talked for about an hour. We had stuff to catch up on. I asked her, there were a set of photographs of the 2 of them making love.
Okay, yes.
She and her husband. She and her husband making love. I said, Mimi, could I use those photographs? And she said, sure. And so we finished the conversation, and we exchanged email addresses, and she gave me her email address, and then she said, wait a minute, that's my professional email address. Let me give you my personal email address. And her personal email address was something like volupta at something or other. And I said, Mimi, what's with the address? And she explained to me that she and her husband had been monogamous for about 15 years, but then she had discovered the internet.
Oh.
And so I published those photographs in an issue. And there's small photographs of the 2 of them making love in sort of an empty room with window blinds coming down.
Yeah.
And there's one in which she is sitting on the floor next to a window. She's wrapped the drape around herself, but John is walking towards her and towards the camera, full frontal nudity, right? So you can see in his pubic hair, there is a little white line that's about that long, right? Which is his penis, right? And I took the trouble of going to my lawyer and saying, can I publish this photograph? He said, well, I wouldn't do it, so I did it anyway. So I never get any response to my...
Not even that one?
No, I got a bunch of responses. And the responses were all, oh, what a terrific issue. I like the issue very much. But no, I never mentioned the photograph. But it was clear that that was the only reason that for once people were responding to me, you know.
Yeah, I think you've gotten some response.
I've gotten some
responses.
Years. There are a few people who respond regularly. I remember walking down the street and having someone come up towards me up the sidewalk who I knew got my magazine, because I sent about 1,000 of them out to subscribers. They're free. Just send me your address and I'll put you on the subscription list. I knew he'd just recently gotten the issue of the magazine, and he walked up to me and there was sort of an awkward silence, and then he said, I got your magazine. I said, uh-huh. And then there was another silence, and then he said, it's very beautiful, which of course, I like it that it's beautiful, but I would like people to look at the content as well as the form of it, you know. And I said, uh-huh. And then there was a long pause, and he looked at me and he said, what's it about? So sometimes the magazine confuses people because It's sort of, it seems undisciplined, it seems disconnected, it seems like the articles, what does this have to do with that? You know, and what I've come to explain to myself is that the magazine is not really about anything, you know.
But there are themes sometimes.
Yeah, there are
there's
themes,
a
but you
theme.
can make something that's not about anything. You just make it to make it, you know. It's about itself. I mean, it is a thing that I make. That's what it is. Yeah, now you can say to me, what are you about? Well, I don't know. But
Well, we're a collection of experiences.
Yeah.
And Burlington has that. I mean, in a
That's right.
certain way,
That's right.
it reflects,
It's a mirror,
to bring
yeah.
it back to Burlington,
yeah, absolutely.
it reflects the diversity of Burlington.
You understand what it's about.
Well, yeah, that's why I like it. That's why I like you.
Yeah.
And it's true that not everybody understands it because maybe it's complex, or, you know, part of it pushes you one way and part of it pushes you another way.
It's also elitist. You know, I'm an aristocrat, basically. You know,
Well, and it's talking about design, and it's critiquing, assessing, and not everything that we read anymore does that.
yeah. Yeah. I think when I came here, I was struck by the fact that the Burlington Free Press almost every week had a review of a high school band performance somewhere, and they never had a review of a work of architecture. I think that's what was in my mind when I started the magazine, really.
Yeah. I find that people are this goes back to where we were talking before, people in this country, especially here, are very used to folks who can build things, but they don't understand that design is also about building, whether it's on paper or in three-dimensional, or now in 3D space. That creative notion of building is inherent in all of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's an ongoing question for me of why isn't, why don't we have an architecture and design school at UVM, for example? I know the answer, but it's still a question.
What's the answer?
Back in the formation of the University of Maine, if I have it right, it was Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. They strategically decided to one should have the medical school, one should have the engineering school, and one should have the architecture school.
Really?
Now, that has shifted since then, but that's why UVM has the medical school and not the architecture school.
Yeah.
It was research done by Bob Holdridge 35 years ago. And so I'm just recreating a story that I sort of imbibed at that point in time.
I can give you a different version.
Yeah.
I tried to start an architectural school. When I saw there was no architectural school in Vermont. It was before Norwich. And I decided that one of the first things when I came here was that there should be an architectural school. So I went to see Blatty Coor, who was the president of UVM at the time. And I pointed out to him that in an architectural curriculum, there are about 160 credits, and that right now at the university, you could take about 100 of those credits, which are electives of various kinds, right? Math and environmental studies and different things, so that you'd only need to introduce another 60 credits, and all you'd have to do would be to get all those various schools that offered those credits to work together to create this. He laughed, he said, "You are never going to get the deans of those schools to agree to work with each other."
Right. Well, at least we have historic preservation, but
Yeah.
I also taught through community development and applied economics. And there were 7 of us that taught.
Applied economics?
That's
You taught that?
CDAE, no, that was the department.
Oh,
And under that, we had 7 of us as adjunct teaching design and planning and architecture in a variety of ways.
really?
And we created the Green Design Minor, amongst other things. But no department would ever sort of take it on as what you described under Blatty Coor. So, it's just not a happening thing. And that's why I come back to why design is so difficult.
Blatty was a terrific president for me because his wife Ina used to give parties, really good parties, terrific parties. And my wife was the chair of the art department at the time, Barbara Zucker. And so they would invite all the deans to the parties, but there were only a handful of deans then. It wasn't enough for a good party, so then they would invite all the chairs. So I went as the
co-chair. Yeah.
No, I went as the spouse, to the parties.
Yeah.
And I remember going to a party at her house where there was dancing, an orchestra and dancing, and everybody got up to dance, and I was left at a table with one woman like you, sitting across from me, like you, that's a stupid statement, was sitting across the table from me, and I said, would you like to dance? And she said, sure. And we got up, we started dancing, and she said, so are you in the faculty? And I said, no, I'm a faculty spouse. And I said, what do you do? She said, I'm the lieutenant governor of the state of Vermont. I thought that was so classy. That would have not happened in New York. It was great. That was Madeline, of course, who then went on to become the governor of the state of New York.
Yeah. Oh, state of Vermont.
Well, the state of Vermont,
Yeah. Well, maybe we should, I don't know, wrap it up. I'm not sure time-wise stuff, but parties are a good thing.
What do you really want to know, Diane?
What do I really want to know?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite issue? Do you have a favorite part of any one of them? Or in the production of it, is there, because you're doing everything, right? You're putting it together, you're finding it, and doing the graphics. What is there any one crux to it that drives you more than another?
Well, I'll try to answer a different question.
Okay.
There are some issues that, for me, were really successful. The first one was my mother issue. I wanted to write an issue about my mother, to honor my mother. And so I asked all my friends, people I knew, if they would write about their mother. And I got a lot of submissions, and there were wonderful mothers, mediocre mothers, and some really bad mothers. Some really wicked mothers that came out of that issue. And it was an issue that people read and identified with, because everybody mostly has a mother. And I think that was a really good issue. And it has a picture of my mother on the cover and on the back cover, and I like that too, And I wrote about my mother. And as in everything, I found out stuff about my mother in writing about her. Like, for instance, I picked out a photograph to use at the back, and I'd had that photograph for years and years and years of my mother, but in using it, I had to look at it with a critical eye, and I realized that my mother was really unhappy. And it was a time when my father, who was what's the word when you see a lot of women? Who was quite promiscuous. Was being promiscuous. And it was all of her body language in her face. You could see it. She was in her 60s. So I find stuff out about myself, about my family, about my friends in doing the magazine. So that issue. Then I've done 3 monographs. One about Wes Disney, who was a painter, artist who lived in Burlington. And it was a beautiful issue. Many of his friends, artists, wrote about him.
Yeah.
And I thought the writing was really good. And the photographs I published of his were beautiful. I thought it was a complete thing. It was really good. I wrote another monograph about my accountant.
Oh, yes.
And my accountant,
with the limericks.
Yeah, he was my accountant for 40 years. And he had a spectacular life. He had been, aside from being an accountant, he was in the CIA during all the time he was an accountant. And he had done terrible and wonderful things in the CIA. And after he retired from the CIA, about 10 years after, he started talking to me about his experiences in the CIA. And he loved Chinese food, he loved opera, he loved costumes. He would invite many of his clients to a Chinese dinner once a year, and we would all go together. He would pick the food, he would pick the restaurant. He was a terrific man. And then when he died, his daughter found his birth certificate, which indicated that none of the things he said were true about his life. None of it. That he made it all up, his whole life, his whole persona, you know? And I was taken aback, as were all his friends. And of course, you know, if you had been a member of the CIA and they wanted the public not to know that they could change your birth certificate, you know, no sweat, right? So I still don't know. I think he was a pathological liar. I think he made it all up. But he did it so creatively and so terrifically that I think of him as a fiction writer. Mm-hmm. You know, he fictionalized his life. That issue I had a terrific time working with. I had a really good time.
What about the one that I think of as sort of iconic, because you sort of interview a number of architects that you know or have been in your life, or maybe there's even one or two that are
alive.
Yeah, some are alive and some aren't.
Yeah, some are sitting right next to me.
Well, but that issue, where ostensibly you're talking about 20 different architects and what their worldviews are and so forth, but each one represents a characteristic of yourself that you're bringing out in it.
But most do, many do,
yeah.
No, that, so...
Because it became autobiographical.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
I didn't mean it that way, but it did.
No, but I thought brilliantly it did.
Yeah, so that issue was basically like 50 people who have been an influence in my architectural life. Mm-hmm. Not all of them architects, but most of them. And there was a page and a photograph for each person. I think that's a swell issue. I think that's a really good issue.
Well, it pulled a lot of things together.
Yeah, for me. And then I did an issue about my brother. I did a monograph about my brother.
That's right.
And it was a hard issue to do because my brother had been a junkie, and then he became a Scientologist. And I tried to interview Scientologists about my brother, and they were very reluctant to speak. Yeah. Because they were afraid of, these were mostly people who had left Scientology and who were afraid of retributions if they said something that Scientology didn't like. But I put together what I thought was a good issue about my brother, a good way of honoring my brother.
Yeah.
I think those were the best issues for me.
So how do we want to wrap this up? Ongoing.
Well, they're going to bring us food, right?
Right.
And we're going to have sex, right?
Right. 30 years of architecture, design, planning.
Yeah. Has everybody
sex.
seen Love Actually?
No. Is it a movie?
Yes.
Oh.
It's a movie with Hugh Grant and Emma Thompson, and many, many people are in it. And I identified with a rock singer in that group, in that movie.
Okay.
It's a Christmas movie. You'll see it. How do we wrap it up? Well, I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity.
I think we're really grateful that you've been doing this and keeping us in touch with all the aspects.
Thank you.
All the aspects that make us tick, right? I mean, it's all about life and love and Burlington.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Mannie, you're great.
Thanks, sweetie.
Yeah.